I'm Terry Owens. Welcome to Conversations with Tio, where real talk meets real life. We bring you stories of grit and grace where everyday people share how they've overcome challenges to make life better for themselves and for others. 10,000 stories, 5,000 live shots. That's how much content I produced over the course of my career in television news. But it almost didn't happen. I nearly blew it. I was working as a reporter in San Francisco when I was assigned to cover a mudslide. But there was one problem. I'd never done a live shot. And when that little red light on the camera came on indicating that I was live, I froze. I panicked. I'd written this long introduction and I forgot what I was going to say. I heard myself stumbling and stammering over my words. And finally I said, "Just roll the videotape." I got back to the station. My boss was waiting for me and he looked at me. He said, "Terry, if you can't do a live shot, I can't use you." And in that moment, I saw my career slipping away. But they called me back the next day and the day after that. And from that time on, I made it my point to master the art of the live shot and to get over my fear of public speaking. The end result, 10,000 stories, 5,000 live shots. Don't let your fear of public speaking stop you from realizing your dreams. Get some help. I'm here to support you. You can reach me at terry@owensmediagroup.net. That's terry@owensmediagroup.net. And now to our guest. Dr. David Walker is CEO of the Walker Media Group. He is a master storyteller, motivational speaker, and author. He shares personal stories and inspires people to be their authentic selves. Let me bring him onto the stage. Dr. Walker, welcome to Conversations with T.O.
Terry, how are you? I am super excited to be on the show today, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Well, let's start. And I want to begin with that being your authentic self. I think you say that when you are being your authentic self, that's when you can fully realize your advantages in life. Say more about that.
Sure. Well, again, and first of all, thank you again for having me on the show. But I believe that the greatest asset that we have is being ourselves. And in some of my talks, I have one point in my talk. I have a talk called The Champion's Mind, or Unleashing the Champion's Mind. And in that talk, I talk about how to maintain your advantage. And the question is, what is the advantage that we need to maintain? Well, the advantage is that whatever your life is, whatever your life experience, whatever you have been through, that is your story. You can't change the life that you live. You cannot change what has happened to you. For example, if you're someone who came and you had an absentee father, or you grew up poor, or you grew up abused, whatever has happened to you in life, you cannot change that. And so many people try to make it that whatever you've experienced, they try to make it a negative, and it seems like a negative because of what has happened. But what you need to do is to turn that negative into a positive, because you can't change it, as I said. So therefore, if you continue to look at the things that have happened to you in a negative light, it will always defeat you. But if you can take those experiences and turn it around and use it in a positive way, what you will realize is that you have experiences that other people don't have. You have overcome challenges that other people have not overcome. You have a story to tell someone else how to overcome and how to make it because of what you've been through. So what you have to understand is that when you are your authentic self, that means whoever you are, that is your life's advantage. And that is how you will win in life. You will never win being someone else, but you can only win in life being who you are. So live out your authentic self, and that's how you win.
The question haunting many, though, is How do you know when you're being your authentic self or who you think society expects you to be?
Well, yeah, there's always labels in society, right? There are always expectations in society, but the reality is a true living and exciting living and quality living is being who you are. It's looking deep down within yourself and say, "This is who I am," and you need to present yourself to the world as you are, because who you are, God made you to be that way. Terry, you can name any celebrity in the world. I'll name one right now, Terry Owens. I'll name one right now, Terry Owens. On Terry Owens's best day, he could never be a better me than I can be. So if I am my best, no matter how great Terry Owens is, or no matter how great anyone else is, they could never beat me at being myself. So if I am myself, regardless of what society says, then I live out my best life by being authentic to me and who I am.
So that sounds like great advice for people who are in the midst of that journey and
Mhm.
trying to understand themselves and who their authentic self really is. Because as you know, for a lot of people, it's a struggle to get there.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It is a struggle. It is sometimes it's a struggle to find out who you are. And usually people struggle with finding out who you are because they're really looking for that person. I don't believe we should ever look for who we are. I believe we should discern who we are. What do I mean by that word discern?
Mm-hmm.
That means when you go looking for yourself, you'll never find it because you're trying to discover it. But when you discern who you are, that means it's an inward look. Discovering who you are is an outward look. You're always looking, comparing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
figuring out. But a discerning look means that I look within. And when I look within, my life will tell me every day exactly who I am, because who I am lives on the inside. And who I am is what God has already given me on the inside. So if you ever really want to know who you are, take a look on the inside, because that's where that person is.
And you've got to learn to listen to that inner voice. David,
Absolutely.
someone once said there is power in a name.
Oh, wow.
I know that preaches all day, but we're not
Yes.
going to do that. We're not going to do that. Unlike a lot of people, uh, many of us don't know where we got our names, but you know exactly where you
Yeah.
got your name. And there's a story there. Can you share that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, let me take you back to March of 1960. Before sonograms or gender reveal parties, my parents did not know my gender, but they decided that my name would be Michael. I think my mother thought I was going to be an angel. And so my mother was excited that she had finally come up with a name, and she went around telling all of her friends. She says, I got a name for my son, and his name is going to be Michael. But my mother comes to my grandmother. My grandmother, her name was Martha Culbreth. My mother comes to my grandma Martha, and she says, "Ma, if I have another boy, I have an older brother, Robert." She says, "If I have another son, we've decided to name him Michael." But after my grandma Martha heard this news, she turned to my mother, she looked her directly in her eye, and she said, "His name is David." And then she said, because David in the Bible was a king, David killed Goliath, and David was a great man, and my grandson will be named David, and he will be a great man. Terry, let me tell you, I love my grandmother. I love my grandma Martha because, first of all, that story tells me that my grandma Martha was talking to God about me before I got here.
Mm.
And she said, his name is David, because what she saw me as a giant slayer. She saw me as an overcomer, a winner, and a champion. So my grandmother saw me winning, Terry. She saw me winning. So that's why she gave me that name, David. But I also believe that she gave me the name David because she saw some of the struggles that I would go through.
Mm.
And she wanted me to overcome those struggles, struggles with self-esteem. I went through all of that.
Yeah.
struggles with, feeling like I needed other people's approval. And I'm sure many people in the audience have, worrying about what other people are thinking about what you want to do. And that's a struggle. And sometimes here is something, Terry, that we've all struggled with: the imposter syndrome.
Mm.
Can I really do that? Will people believe that I could do something so great? But my grandmother saw that I would struggle with those things, but I believe that what she wanted me to do, that whenever I'm going through those struggles, she would want me to reach deep down inside and pull up that giant slayer, pull up that inner strength, pull up that inner power that would tell me no matter what I go through, no matter what challenges come in my life, that I could overcome them. And that's why my grandmother, and I love her dearly for this, she said his name is David. And I've been feeling like a giant slayer ever since.
I was going to ask how her prophetic vision has played out in your life.
Yeah. Well, it has in many ways, because if I could just talk about a little bit about where I grew up. I grew up in an urban community in Brooklyn, New York called Bed-Stuy. And maybe people in your audience may have heard of Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, New York. But Bed-Stuy is the home of Biggie and Jay-Z and Chris Rock. And then for some of our seasoned saints, Bed-Stuy is the home of Earl Graves and Lena Horne, and a woman who was the very first person to talk about a folding chair. Her name was Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm said that if they don't invite you to the table, bring your own folding chair. And so those are some of the legends who came from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. But Bed-Stuy had this tagline, Terry. It was known as Bed-Stuy, do or die. Mm. Terry, can you imagine being a little boy and you're growing up and life offers you the option of either you do or you die? And that's what the life that was offered to me. But because I had that praying grandmother, because my grandmother told me no matter what life offers you, you can be a champion, you can be a winner. And David, don't let anything get you down. So I used to hear her tell me all the time. Of course, she took us to church and gave us Jesus and all that kind of stuff. But she always told me that don't ever allow anything to get you down so much that you cannot come back from it. Mm. So that's my grandma's story. And again, I love her dearly.
I love that. I love that. Those kinds of testimonials speak to the things that shape our lives. And another thing that's played a pivotal role in your life has been sports. You were very much engaged. In fact, at one point in your life, you were almost thinking about turning pro. What happened there?
Well, yes, I have been a lover of sports all my life. And it was sports and athletics that got me into college. Mm-hmm. And if I could just take a minute, when you talked about being pro, I never forget, I in my senior year of college, I received a letter from the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Wow.
Yes. And the Dodgers had invited me to try out for their baseball team. And, Terry, as you can imagine, coming from Bed-Stuy, do or die, Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, getting that letter from the Los Angeles Dodgers, I'm saying, oh my, here it is. Here's my opportunity to come out of the ghetto. And as they say, come out of the ghetto and get mo, right? I'm on my way to being this professional athlete. I had finally developed my talents to receiving this letter. And Terry, just a few days before that tryout, I was playing in a game and I was standing on second base. And my teammate got a base hit to the outfield. And as I'm dashing around third, trying to come home and score a run for my team, there was a play at the plate. The throw was high. The catcher jumped up in the air to catch the ball. And as he caught the ball in the air, and as I went to put my foot on home base, Terry, the catcher came down and he broke my leg. That was many years ago, but even today, I still can feel that moment of laying there on the ground, screaming and hollering, my leg, my leg. And Terry, I got, while I was laying there, I got a chance to look at my leg, and what I saw, I knew what had happened. I knew that I wasn't going to make that tryout. I knew as I was laying there, I was sad and disappointed and depressed, of course. But Terry, let me say this. While I was laying there, I also realized that I was experiencing what you call a defining moment.
Hmm.
It was Kevin Costner in the movie Tin Cup who said, when a defining moment comes, either you define the moment or the moment will define you.
Wow.
And I decided to define that moment. I knew I was going to make the tryout. My baseball career was over, but what was I going to do? And in that moment, I said, I'm going to make a decision. The decision I made that day was that I was going to go home, rehab my leg, which I did. I came back to school, finished my degree. I went on and earned several degrees. I became an educator, a school administrator, and my life turned around. And even though that was a disappointment, and again, I remember what my grandma said: "You're a champion. The greatest of obstacles, you have what's in you to overcome them." And so, while I never made it to the major leagues, I still went on and did something very productive in society. And as I oftentimes say, while I thought that coming out of Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, I was going to become a living legend like Biggie and Jay and all. I was going to be like them, make a name for myself. And while I thought my sports and my athletics was going to make me that living legend, in actuality, it ended up becoming my education. Earning my degrees, earning my doctorate, becoming an educator of students and of people. And so I feel like deep down inside, even though one dream and one goal didn't happen, that doesn't mean that that's the end of your life and the end of future possibilities.
And so how are you using your story to empower others?
Well, of course, I'm always talking to young people, right? Young minds, high school, college students, and then of course adults too. I tell them about how to become a successful. And one of the things when I'm working with young people, I talk to aspiring leaders, and what I help them to do is what I call unleashing their champion's mind. So that way they can become, develop effective success strategies and to succeed in life. And I find that for many people, whether you're young or old, life is going to bring you obstacles. And when the obstacle comes, how are you going to navigate them? How are you going to get over them? How are you going to get around them? I was listening to you talking to your introduction about the fear that came on you when that red light came on. And you were reminding me, or when I was listening to you, I'm reminded about the subject of fear. And in my talk, I talk about how to manage your fear, understanding that fear is a part of life. You will never, ever in life be successful without going through fear. Fear, I say that fear is the fraternal twin of faith. We have faith to believe, but you cannot, your faith says I can, but the fraternal twin of faith, fear, is going to show up to always tell you you can't. And the question is, when that fear shows up, what are you going to do about it? It was Nelson Mandela who said, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And if we can get to the point to understand that God has the best things in life on the other side of fear, and if we can just get past that fear, and you've talked about in your story how after you got past that fear, everything turned around positively for you, all the interviews and the presentations, but you needed to get past that fear. And so many of us need to understand that God has the best things in life on the other side of fear. And if you could just get to that other side, everything in life that you wanted is waiting for you right there.
And that's the perfect segue to your latest book, The Champion's Mind. David, what was the inspiration?
To be honest with you, my grandmother. And I tell you why. And I have a copy of the book here in front of me, The Champion's Mind, How to Defeat Giants and Win. And going back to my grandmother, growing up with the name of David, I was always compared to the biblical character, right? David, right? And so one day I decided I was going to just do some more reading. And when I read about him, I found out that David won at everything that he did, everything. He wasn't just a giant slayer. he was a champion, and he was a winner. And so as I was reading through the Bible, I came across a scripture, 1 Samuel 16:18. That story was about when King Saul had this uncontrollable spirit that kept coming on him, and his servants were looking for someone to play the harp to calm him down. I believe that was the first indication of where, music calms the savage beast. So they were looking for David, and they said, I know someone, I've seen him for myself. He's an excellent musician. He's brave. He's a warrior. He's well-spoken. He's good looking, and God is with him. And when I read that scripture, 1 Samuel 16:18, I said, this was the formula that David used to be so successful. And I took those 6 or 7 points in that verse of scripture, and I wrote a chapter in the book for each one of those, saying that if you take these characteristics that David had, each one of these 6 and 7, it will help you to be the champion that you are. And of course, the first chapter, the first thing they said about David was he was an excellent musician. And so in chapter 1, the chapter 1 is titled Master Your Gift. And I believe that God gives all of us a gift, and that gift is designed for us to win with it. But we just can't have a gift. You got to master it. You got to build it, because the gift that you have, its purpose is to solve other people's problems.
You also talk about relentless leadership. I was really struck by that.
Yeah.
Say about what you mean there.
So relentless leadership is being relentless and determined, especially in your leadership, leading, winning. And you don't have to necessarily be a leader. It's anything in life. It could be a mother, raising her children. Be relentless. Don't be mediocre. Don't be partial. Go all the way. Go the extra mile. There was a man, I can't remember his name right now, but he talked about how within us, we all could do, no matter how far we think we go, we can all do at least one more. You know what I'm saying? You ever do some push-ups and you do 50? Well, maybe you might not do 50. Maybe I might not do 50, but
a long time ago.
Exactly. Maybe we're around 4, 5, or 6, right? But in reality, no matter where that max is, or we believe that max is, guess what? There's at least one more. So there's more. Relentless means that when I feel like quitting, there's more. There's more in me. And of course, in that chapter, I talk about various people who were relentless, like Colin Powell. And I believe I talk about a guy named David Stewart. I believe I talk about David Stewart in that chapter. David Stewart is the third wealthiest Black man in America. He developed a tech company. So look him up, David Stewart. He's in technology. He's like the second wealthiest Black person in the world. I think Robert F. Smith is first, and I'm not sure who's second, but then David Stewart is like third, and he's worth maybe like 14, 15 billion dollars, something like that. But
you
I
caution us.
Oh, yeah.
Against ego-driven leadership.
Yes.
What's the danger there?
Well, ego-driven leadership means you're making it all about you. Leadership is never about you as an individual. Leadership is always about other people. I'm a great leader when I focus on the people that I'm leading. It's not about making people follow me, because when you are a great leader, people follow you out of their own will versus you demanding fellowship. You know what I'm saying? So ego says it's all about me. It's all about what I want to do. It's focused on the leader. No, true leadership is always focused on the people you are leading. And when you lead them with love, when you lead them with care, when you lead them with thinking more about them, then that's what a true leader is.
Dr. Walker, I'm going to ask you to leave us with a final thought. We're right up on our time. I so appreciate you making time for us today. But if you could offer some encouragement to people who are trying to figure out who that authentic person is so that they can realize their dreams.
Yeah, thank you, Terry, for giving me this opportunity. And, again, when I think about all of us dreaming, we all have a dream. It's not just like a Martin Luther King dream. It's really the dream of your life. It's you wanting to be who you are and who God made you. Well, first of all, I do think you got to get in touch with God. I don't believe that life is anywhere successful and as great as it could be if you don't have a relationship with God. And sometimes it could be Christianity, but I just think that more of a spiritual relationship, knowing who God is in your life. If you have that, that's a connection with a higher power. So that's number one. But number two, it is really accepting who you are, looking within inside of you, and see who that person is, and then be bold about it. So many people hide, so many people cower, so many people stand behind other people because they don't want to be seen. But you will never be your greatest self standing behind someone else. You have to be willing to step out front. You have to be willing to be exposed. And here's something else, Terry. You got to be willing to be vulnerable.
Mm.
Because if you're not vulnerable with who you are, then you'll never be as great as who you can be. And sometimes it comes with, even though you may have fears, get past them. You may have concerns, get around them. People will have the opinion of you, but guess what? You can't allow other people's opinion of you to determine what you want to do. So
And you cannot be afraid to fail.
absolutely.
Dr. David Walker, thank you so much for making some time for us. The book is The Champion's Mind. Let me get it in the screen there. You see his website up on the screen there if you'd like to get more information about Dr. Walker and all of the great work that he's doing. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Yeah, just this the website was, if you could just take a look at the website,
Oh,
I
I'm
don't know if you can
sorry.
see it.
I've
Yeah.
got, another guest up there.
Yeah,
My
there
bad.
you go.
drwalkerspeaks.com. That's www.drwalkerspeaks.com. My apologies.
That's okay.
Thank you for flagging that.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to let you get out of here, and we are going to wrap up this episode of Conversations with T.O. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, find a way to continue to strive, and in doing so, enjoy the journey. I'm Terry Owens. This is Conversations with T.O. We'll see you next time.